Hello one and all, welcome to Seen Through Glass. This is the McLaren Artura, the newest supercar from McLaren, their next generation. I've been loaning this thing for 3 days. To maximise the opportunity, I've woken up at 4:30 in the morning. I'm going to head to Wales, meaning I'm going to do about 500 miles in this car today. Now the Artura is a hybrid, which means this morning, with this super early start, I can sneak away from my neighbours and out of town in pure electric mode, in silence. I have to be honest, I kind of love that. Very much. Well, the sun is starting to rise behind me and I just stopped for my second coffee of the day. Still a couple of hours from Wales though. Now, if you're new to this channel, I think it's worth me pointing out, I used to own a McLaren, a 540C. It was their entry-level car back in 2016, part of the Sports Series range that precedes this car. I was, and still am, a huge fan of the McLaren automotive brand. But the ownership experiences never seemed to live up to my hopes for the brand and the products themselves. I had endless electronic glitches with my own car, I had problems with cars I borrowed from the factory, and I used to get messages from you lot talking about problems that you had with McLarens that you'd bought. It was all just so disappointing, so I was very vocal about it. But then, coming out of COVID, after the lockdowns, McLaren reached out and said, look, putting our hands up, we know there have been problems, but we're working really hard to address them. We'd love to get you back into some cars to talk to you about our plans for the future. So I spent a week with a 720S Spider and did 500 miles in a 765 LT, which by the way, I think is one of the most underrated cars of recent years. That thing is superb. And yeah, I had brilliant experiences in both cars. I started to get really excited about the brand once again. So I'm kind of expecting to really enjoy this experience and really like this car. But I want to caveat whatever I might go on to say by saying, well, I'm only spending 3 days with this thing. I haven't bought it, it's not a long-term loan. So if I do end up really liking it and saying it's much improved, I can't promise that the ownership experience is much improved. I'm hopeful McLaren are making all the right noises to me in that department. I guess let's be like the Americans and say that they're innocent until proven guilty. At least give McLaren the benefit of the doubt with this thing. Well, you know what they say, time flies when you're having fun, and clearly I've been having fun because welcome to Wales. Anyway, I want to dive straight into it, talk about this car's powertrain, because like I mentioned, it's a hybrid. Now, the only real comparison I have for this car is the Ferrari 296, which also has a V6 hybrid. That system, in my mind, is superb. When I collected the Artura, McLaren made out like their system would be as simple to use. I thought I'd pull over quickly because firstly the weather's taken a sudden turn for the worse and hopefully that's going to blow through, but also it's going to get a little bit detailed and I need to concentrate. So for the Artura you get 4 driving modes. First up, pure electric, which is good for like 16 or 17 miles with a full charge. Second, comfort, which is essentially a hybrid mode, uses both the battery and the engine, switches between the two. And then sport and track, where the engine is constantly on and it's regenerating the battery charge. It does that using the overruns of the engine. All sounds fairly simple, right? And yeah, in theory it is, but when I collected this car yesterday, I drove away from the McLaren Technology Centre in what I thought was the comfort hybrid setting, but actually in electric. So I headed back home and unwittingly depleted the charge fairly quickly. By the time I got to the motorway, I actually had 0 miles remaining on the range and only about 4% of the battery charge. So I actually started losing speed on the motorway. So I pushed harder on the throttle, thinking that it would wake up the engine. Nothing happened. I stamped really hard on the throttle. Still nothing happened. I was like, oh my God. Then I realized I was in the electric mode. So I siphoned up into comfort. The engine roared into life. But for the Artura, if the engine is cold, it needs to go through its cold start procedure. So for about 20 or 30 seconds, the engine will power up, but not actually drive the rear wheels. You're still using the battery to do that. So the engine was on, but there I am on the motorway, losing speed, being like, oh my God. Eventually though, yes, the engine took over, but obviously in comfort, it's not really regenerating that charge. So I had to siphon up to sport. When you're cruising on the motorway, there's not a lot of overrun. So again, I wasn't getting much charge. The only way I could really regain charge in the battery was to, well, shift down the gears and do some pretty aggressive pulls from like 40 to 60 miles an hour on the motorway. And today, well, I'm a little bit less confused, but still unsure, because I left home with 50% charge and maybe 8 or 9 miles on the range. I've spent the whole time in comfort mode because, well, I wanted to be comfy on a long distance journey. And I've got here to Wales and 0 miles on the range and 2% of the battery charged. Now, I don't know if that's necessarily a bad thing. I'm sure the battery is still aiding in my performance, and now I'm here on the twisties, I can go into sport and track and just have fun. But do I need a more charged battery and more range to get the maximum out of this car? Am I not getting the full package because I've depleted the charge? I don't really know. It's just not as straightforward, dare I say it, as the Ferrari. But anyway, we are now here in Wales, off the motorway on twisty roads, and if I stay in sport or track, the battery should recharge itself. So I reckon let's power back up, hit the road, and recharge that battery.
Such a short time being alive, all this hardship and convenience makes it so hard to make sense. I will listen now, I will listen now.
This, by the way, this is why I woke up at 4:30 this morning. Despite the atrocious weather, these roads are spectacular. If you want to do any proper driving in the UK, you really have to head to Scotland or Wales. I tell you what, out here, in these conditions, this car is a bloody joy. Now, what am I going to say that's not going to surprise you? It's fast, yeah, it's fast, as you would expect. It's, I think, over 100 horsepower more powerful than the 570S. But yeah, speed, I mean, you got plenty of it. It's a tiny bit heavier than the 570S, but I don't think you're really going to pick up on that. The thing which I'm noticing today is how playful it is. Okay, the really, really greasy roads are helping bring out that side of this car's personality, but I don't think I've ever had as much giddy fun as a McLaren as I am in this today. Honestly, it's making me smile so much, but over and above that, the thing which I'm going to say I had forgotten about these small, nimble baby McLarens is just how poised they are on a British road. The ride is sublime. I've left it in the comfort suspension setting because it just glides over the road. But yet, it's so flat through the corners. It gives me so much confidence. And then the grip. Okay, I've dialed things back a tiny bit in ESC dynamic mode, but if you just leave it all on, it feels like it's a four-wheel drive car. It just hunkers down and goes. The steering, I think, is fantastic. It's not razor sharp, super light like a Ferrari, but it's a McLaren feel, and it's a great one. It's just a really fun car to drive on the road, and super rewarding. I mean, look out the window. It is miserable out there. It's circa 13 degrees, mud and water and God knows what else, probably some sheep's poo on the road, and I am flying, and I'm not nervous to. There are plenty of cars with this much power and this much agility that I would be nervous to drive like this on a road like this. And I've jumped in this thing after spending 24 hours with it, pooling around town in, well, trying to be hybrid mode, and I'm just wiggling around and, just having the best time. It's a smaller car this than the 570S as well. They shortened the wheelbase, and that's a good thing. It feels spot on for UK or European roads. It's super nimble and easy to place. It actually reminds me a little bit, size-wise, of the Lotus Emira, and actually some of the angles are Emira-esque. Let's slow it down a bit here because the road's got a little bit narrow. Even though this is a smaller car, it's still not that small. Visibility remains fantastic. You get this kind of super low windscreen line. Just means you get a great view out. You can barely see the bonnet actually. You feel like you're sort of sitting on top of the front wheels. I mean, again, the cars are so easy to place. Noise is alright actually. Obviously they stepped down from their iconic V8 engine to this little baby 3-litre V6. I think it sounds kind of similar. It's not the most intoxicating noise, but it's definitely noise. Like, you know, you've got a supercar engine back there, and then there's the performance to accompany it. So yeah, I'm not really left wanting. It's just not symphonic, but McLarens have never been symphonic. Funnily enough, when I was parked up a second ago taking some still shots of this car in a car park, a local came past me. He'd been walking in these fields. He said, me and my wife for the last 20 minutes have been trying to work out what car was flying around the roads. And we never would have guessed one of these. We thought it sounded amazing. So yeah, maybe from the outside it sounds a little bit flutier. Now, whilst there are some amazing roads in Wales, plot your route carefully because there are also roads like this which don't suit supercars. Google Maps said, take a left. And I mean, this road is, just not good for a low-riding McLaren that isn't even yours. I'm having to be very careful. I've got the lift up. Just taking it real slow. The problem is there's not even really anywhere to turn around. I'm really hoping I don't bottom out anywhere here or find a tractor coming the other way because we're going to be in trouble. So yeah, Wales is great. Just don't get lost here and maybe don't listen to Google Maps. Just follow your nose. This is not where my nose would have taken me. Perfect, mate. What's your Instagram? What's your
Nice one. 80 Snaps Cars. I do it all on there.
Nice to meet you, mate. Cheers, pal.
Yeah.
I have to say, I absolutely love it when I randomly bump into some of you out and about filming, especially when I'm in something like this, as the Ludlow farm shops, and it turns out the barista here is a seen-through-glass viewer. Absolutely amazing. Just proves petrol heads are everywhere. Anyway, I passed this place this morning, thought it looked like a good place to get lunch. I feel like I've done well, got myself a delicious coffee, picked up a sausage roll and a couple of other snacks, so I'm going to be digging into that very shortly. But before I do that, I thought I'd quickly talk you through this interior, because whilst it might look familiar, it's actually a very different interior for McLaren. They've made some pretty fundamental changes, but for the better. I think they've improved the user experience. Starting with, for example, how you select the various driver modes. I already mentioned comfort, sport, track, electric. Previously, you'd have to siphon through them via two buttons down here on the kind of central console. You had to first activate them with the button, and then you and when you were driving, it was quite distracting. You'd kind of have to look down here and often take your eyes off the road, and yeah, it wasn't ideal. So they've moved them up here to be on this instrument binnacle. Binnacle's a McLaren word, I believe. But yeah, I mean, they're great. It's a really, really natural position for them because as you're driving, you can kind of reach them with your index fingers, and these two rockers. You actually don't even need to look, you can just kind of feel it out. The one on the right changes your powertrain settings, as I say, electric, comfort, sport and track, and the one on the left is for your handling, your suspension settings, and that comfort, sport and track. You can also turn traction control off or ESC into dynamic, and hit the manual button for the gears so that you can control them via the paddles. I really, really like that. Now, something which is quite niche but very important for all current or ex-McLaren owners, the lift system. Previously, to activate the lift on a McLaren, it was super complicated. It was done via this stalk here and a sub-menu on the sort of screen in front of you. You could never really remember which way you had to go. Was it up? Was it down? It just took forever. So they've moved that to just a very simple button over there on the dashboard. Makes a lot more sense. What else? These seats, these are the new Club Sport bucket seats. I'm not usually a fan of buckets, but I actually quite like these. Not too bad to get in and out of. Super snug once you're in them. And they kind of have this rocker movement. So there's a little switch here, and then it sort of lifts you up and tilts you forward. So the whole sort of thing is like, it's quite nice. Doors and speakers, actually. This car's equipped with the Bowers & Wilkins sound system, which is fantastic. But the doors have changed because now you get these sort of additional cubby holes, which we never used to have on McLarens. That's where the subwoofers used to be. But they've moved down there to the central console, kind of where your feet are. Frees up some space in the doors and improves the sound system. So yeah, this is really top level sports or supercar sound system in here now. This kind of floating central console, this is the infotainment system. Used to be very bad in McLaren. It was always very slow, the resolution was very poor, but I actually think they've really improved it. It seems pretty responsive. I have my CarPlay active most of the time, but done everything I wanted it to do. Some ambient lighting setting. Oh, look at that. Footwell door, and wow, I can change so much. It's just kind of the overall experience as a McLaren owner or driver has really improved. It's more livable with, more usable than ever. And the fact that after I've had my coffee and my Citroën, I've got a 250 odd mile journey home, really doesn't faze me. I'm actually sort of slightly excited by it. This car even has radar guided cruise control. So I genuinely can sit back, relax in these very comfy seats. I've got great visibility, like I mentioned earlier, get the sound system absolutely blasting, and just chill and cruise, which is quite insane to think, considering what I was doing in this car 30 minutes ago. Well, I'm nearly home now. I've got about 4.5 miles to go. My onboard trip computer's telling me I've done 505 miles since I collected this car from McLaren, averaging 19.7 mpg, which I think is pretty good considering how I was driving this morning. But yeah, look, I've been thinking about it a lot, and having now driven 500 miles in an Artura, I can confidently say I love this thing. Oh, genuinely, I am absolutely obsessed with this car. I was expecting to enjoy this experience. I wasn't expecting to be as blown away as I have been. This thing's fantastic. I actually struggle to think of many negatives about this car. It kind of does everything right. The engine is superb. The new 8-speed gearbox, incredibly smooth. The engine itself actually is incredibly smooth. The ride is super smooth. The visibility is great. The cabin, as I just showed you, is super nice. It's comfortable. It looks the bomb. It sounds good. Like, it's one of the most complete supercars on the current market. I've been trying to work out what its competitors are. Obviously, you have to mention the 296 GTB because it's really the only other modern hybrid supercar. Okay, you could say also the Honda or Acura NSX, but that car's a little bit old now. And the 296 is, well, 100 grand more than this. So this thing does kind of sit by itself. But in my mind, one of the competitors would be a 911 Turbo S. I think this thing smashes the Turbo S out of the water. I'd have this over a Turbo S every day of the week. I'd have this over many other cars any day of the week. That's how much I like it. I actually stopped at a petrol station earlier and jumped on the configurator. I was like, I'm going to buy an Artura. I'm going to do it. I didn't realise how expensive they are. It starts at 190 grand, this car, plus options. I think the 570S was like 150 or 155, so it's quite a step up. I guess all new cars are more expensive these days, but yeah, I was like, well, I can't afford that. So I'm going to have to bide my time and hope that they come down in value on the used market. I guess the only thing that I would add to my considerations before I went and threw a load of money at one of these cars would be the reliability. It has to be mentioned, has to be talked about. I did talk about it briefly at the start of the video, but yeah, whilst McLaren are making all the right noises, I would still be a bit nervous because they're saying the right things, but there has to be proof in the pudding, right? Michael Leiters, the new CEO of McLaren Automotive, basically blamed the delays with the Artura down to the fact that, well, it wasn't really ready. Sort of quality control. He was like, look, it's not good enough. And I'd rather wait and make sure it's perfect than rush it out the door. Which, hey, I'm massively approving of that because I kind of feel like maybe that was McLaren's issue previously. The cars were never quite ready or quite finished, but they'd just go, oh, just send them. We need to get them sold. So look, if that's meant that the car is arriving to market a little bit later than planned, but it's actually going to work, then well, I think it's worth it. And yeah, 500 miles now, a couple of days, this thing's been perfect. And you've seen the weather I've been driving in today. It's not just the weather. I've been absolutely thrashing this thing, going through every single different driving mode, starting it, stopping it, starting it, stopping it, leaving the doors open, letting wind bash it, reverse, sport, traction off, everything. It's not put a foot wrong. It's done everything perfectly. And that's why I think I'm so enamored by it. It just does everything so well. It's a supercar you could happily use every day and love to use every day. Feels special, but also just really nice and easy. And then ballistically fast and great to drive. And I can't stop saying enough positive things. I honestly, maybe I've just gone mad and drunk the Kool-Aid and just had a really good day. But I don't think I have. I just think this car is fantastic. So bravo McLaren for all the little bits that you've done to move this car forward. The active limited slip diff and things like that. It's just transformed it to make it a really, really nice package. So if, like me, you're a previous McLaren owner that felt like you got burned a little bit, or maybe you've never really been tempted by McLaren because you've heard a few negative connotations, come back and seriously consider one of these cars. Because I say, if I had the money, if I was in the market for a 200 grand supercar, this is where I'd come straight away. And I'm just hoping that over the years they do come down on that used market and I can snap one up at some point. So if you are buying them, spec some nice ones, will you? So that I've got options. But yeah, anyway, I'm going to wrap things up now because I say nearly home. But yeah, 500 miles in an Artura, and I can confidently say I love it.